Most women think they know how a man acts when he's in love, but only 1% ever get to see this side of him. It's not about what he says in public or how charming he is on dates. It's about the things he does quietly, consistently, and only for the one woman who makes him feel safe, inspired, and deeply connected. If you've ever wondered whether you're that woman, pay close attention, because the way a man treats the one is unlike anything you've seen before. When a man is truly in love with a woman he sees as the one, there's a level of emotional honesty that begins to surface, one that he doesn't show to just anyone. Most men grow up with a subtle or overt pressure to be strong, stoic, and unshakable, so vulnerability is not something that comes naturally or easily. But when he finds a woman who makes him feel emotionally safe, that armor begins to drop. He no longer feels the need to perform or posture. Instead, he allows himself to be real. You'll see him talk about things he normally keeps locked inside, like childhood trauma, the pressure he feels to succeed, moments where he's doubted himself, or even times when he didn't feel like enough. This kind of openness doesn't come from weakness, it comes from trust. It's a silent message that says, I feel safe enough with you to let you into the parts of me that scare me. That level of transparency is rare, and he doesn't give it to women he's only casually dating or still unsure about. It's a powerful shift when a man transitions from simply wanting to impress you to genuinely wanting to be known by you. He'll show you the sides of him that aren't polished or proud. He may even cry in front of you or admit fears that he's never voiced aloud. And while it might catch you off guard, it's actually one of the clearest indicators that he's not just physically attracted to you, he's emotionally connected. Vulnerability isn't just him opening up, it's him trusting that you won't use his emotional truths against him later. And once he gives you that access, he watches how you hold it. If you respond with understanding, patience, and grace, it pulls him even closer, creating a kind of intimacy that runs far deeper than surface-level chemistry. It's easy to love someone's strengths, but it's in those fragile moments, when he's unsure of himself, when he questions his worth, when he reveals his emotional scars, that you get to see the depth of the connection. And very few women ever get to witness this version of a man, because he reserves it for the one who feels like home, not the one who reacts with judgment, but the one who sits beside him in his mess and stays. So when a man reveals his vulnerability, not out of obligation, but out of choice, you're not just seeing his heart, you're being invited into it. When a man truly sees a woman as the one, his entire emotional radar shifts, and suddenly, her feelings become a priority in ways they never were before with anyone else. He becomes deeply attuned to her emotional climate, not just responding to what she says, but sensing what she doesn't say. He starts paying attention to her tone, her pauses, the silence in her voice, the subtle drop in her energy, the look in her eyes when she says she's fine, but clearly isn't. He doesn't wait for her to explode before he checks in. He leans in early, noticing when something's off and showing genuine concern, not because he's afraid of conflict, but because her emotional well-being matters to him at a core level. This kind of man doesn't just want to make her laugh or impress her with charm. He wants to be a source of peace and emotional stability. He listens, really listens, without always rushing to fix, defend, or dismiss. He begins to understand that holding space for her feelings is more valuable than always having the right answers. He becomes mindful of how his words land, how his silence might be interpreted, how his actions make her feel loved or forgotten. If she's been hurt in the past, he becomes more gentle around those wounds, not walking on eggshells, but showing care and patience, letting her feel safe in ways she hasn't before. And this isn't about being perfect, it's about being emotionally available. When other people might joke, ignore, or shut down when emotions arise, he leans in because he doesn't see her emotions as inconvenient. He sees them as windows into her heart. He starts to care about what makes her feel anxious, what lifts her up, what makes her doubt herself, and what helps her breathe easier. He doesn't minimize her feelings, even if he doesn't fully understand them. And in doing so, he creates a space where she can be fully herself. Messy, joyful, confused, overwhelmed, and everything in between. And what's more powerful is that this level of emotional safety isn't built with grand romantic gestures but in the little things, sending a message when she's quiet just to say he's thinking of her, remembering something small she said in passing and acting on it later, checking in after an argument instead of pretending nothing happened, or just simply being consistent in the way he shows up emotionally. These are not things a man does for just anyone. They're reserved for the one woman he sees as different, the woman whose heart he wants to protect, not because he thinks she's fragile, but because he respects the depth of her feelings and wants to be someone she can trust with them. When a man sees a woman as the one, she naturally becomes part of his internal decision-making process, even when she's not physically in the room. It's not something he forces, it just starts happening on its own. Choices that once revolved solely around his ambitions, convenience, or preferences now begin to include her in subtle but significant ways. He might be offered a new job in another city, and instead of saying yes on the spot, he pauses and thinks about how it would affect her, how it would affect the relationship, and whether the move would bring them closer or create distance. Long-term planning becomes a shared experience in his mind before it even becomes a discussion. You might notice him talking about the future in terms of we instead of I. He'll say things like, when we get a place, or one day when we take that trip, without even realizing how seamlessly she's become embedded into his vision of life. His dreams start to include her laughter, her comfort, her happiness, and her presence, and he becomes more aware that success feels incomplete if she's not a part of it. He begins to evaluate opportunities through the lens of how stable, happy, or secure it would make not just him, but both of them as a unit. If he's making financial decisions, planning a move, or shifting career goals, it's not about sacrifice, it's about alignment. And what's really powerful is that he may start building a life that makes space for her without even having the full conversation yet, because something in him has already chosen her. He upgrades his habits, becomes more thoughtful about the kind of man he wants to be, and even considers timing, when to settle down, when to introduce her to his family, when to invest more deeply in their relationship, all because he feels a sense of emotional stability and vision with her that he hasn't felt with anyone else. And this isn't performative, it's deeply instinctive. His friends might notice the change first, how he turns down plans because he'd rather spend quality time with her, or how his tone changes when he speaks about his future. She's not a guest star in his life, she's becoming a co-author of the story he wants to live. And though he might not always say it directly, his actions make it clear that he's no longer operating as a solo act. He begins to think like a team player, factoring in her dreams, her comfort, and her sense of belonging, because loving her makes him care about creating a life that isn't just big, but one that's big enough for both of them. When a man is truly in love with a woman he sees as the one, he doesn't wait for her to ask him to change. He initiates that transformation on his own, because simply being with her awakens a desire to grow. He starts to notice his own flaws, not through the lens of shame, but through the lens of how they might affect her experience of him. If he's been emotionally unavailable in the past, he becomes more intentional about showing up with presence. If he's had toxic habits, a short temper, or an avoidant streak, he begins to reflect, pause, and course correct. Not because she's nagging, but because he knows deep down she deserves the best version of him, and he's willing to become that man. There's a shift in how he sees accountability, not as criticism, but as an invitation to rise. He catches himself when he's reactive, chooses better words in arguments, becomes more aware of how his moods affect her energy, and most of all, he starts to develop emotional discipline, not to impress her, but to protect what they're building together. You'll notice it in the little things, how he listens longer, how he apologizes faster, how he reflects more and justifies less. When she points out something that hurt her, instead of defending himself out of ego, he leans in and genuinely tries to understand her side. He's not perfect, but he's evolving. And what's so powerful is that she doesn't have to constantly explain what she needs from him, because he's already paying attention. He remembers what triggers her, what uplifts her, and he uses that awareness to shape how he shows up daily. He begins to set goals that aren't just about external success, but about becoming a more grounded, emotionally available, kind, and intentional partner. This growth might even spill into other areas of his life. He might start reading more, setting boundaries, taking care of his health, or surrounding himself with better influences, all because being with her elevates his standards for himself. She becomes a mirror, not just reflecting who he is, but who he has the potential to be. And instead of shrinking away from that mirror, he leans into it. It's as if loving her gives him permission to outgrow the version of himself that settled for less depth, 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 and happens when love is rooted in deep emotional respect, not just attraction. She's not trying to fix him, she's simply showing up as herself, and that alone is powerful enough to inspire growth he never knew he was capable of. When a man has truly chosen a woman as the one, something profound shifts in the way he processes her thoughts, feelings, and perspectives. He starts allowing her to influence him in ways he wouldn't let anyone else. This isn't about control or dominance, it's about respect and emotional openness. He values her opinion not just because he loves her, but because he genuinely believes she sees things he might miss. He might have always prided himself on being independent and decisive, but now, when she speaks, he listens, not just to respond, but to understand. Whether she's giving insight on something he's going through, offering advice about a challenge he's facing, or simply sharing her view on life, he doesn't dismiss it or brush it aside. He takes it to heart. And you'll see it in subtle ways, how he starts adjusting the way he communicates after she explains what makes her feel misunderstood. How he takes her advice on dealing with people in his life, how he reconsiders a decision after reflecting on something she said, or how he slowly begins to break patterns that no longer serve him because she helped him see them differently. He doesn't feel threatened by her influence, he feels expanded by it. She becomes his sounding board, not because he's lost himself in the relationship, but because he trusts her mind just as much as her heart. He sees her as his equal, his partner, someone whose judgment he admires. And because of that, her input carries real weight. Even when he disagrees or wrestles with her point of view, he doesn't become defensive. Instead, he reflects, and often comes back with clarity that shows her words stayed with him. This is a deep form of emotional maturity that most people don't talk about, but it's one of the clearest signs that a man is invested at a soul level. And it doesn't just apply to big decisions or heavy conversations. He lets her influence his daily habits, his values, how he shows up in friendships, even how he sees himself. If she believes in him, he starts to believe in himself more. If she encourages him to pursue a dream he's put on hold, her faith in him becomes the fuel that reignites it. Her love doesn't just comfort him, it shapes him, not in a way that erases who he is, but in a way that helps him step into who he's meant to be. And the most beautiful part is that he's not doing this for approval or to gain affection. He's doing it because he wants to honor the relationship by allowing it to elevate him. He knows that being with someone who sees your blind spots, your potential, and your deeper truth is rare. And rather than resisting that influence, he invites it because in his heart he knows that real love doesn't just accept you as you are, it helps you grow into who you were always meant to become. When a man has found the woman he sees as the one, love no longer becomes something that's just based on feeling good. It becomes a choice, a commitment, and a conscious act of showing up, especially when things get hard. He doesn't vanish when there's tension, he doesn't pull away at the first sign of discomfort, and he doesn't retreat into silence when emotions run high. Instead, he stays, he leans in. He chooses her even on the days when choosing her isn't easy, when miscommunication causes friction, when life is chaotic, or when either of them is emotionally depleted. He understands that the real test of love isn't how he treats her when everything is smooth and romantic, but how he behaves when the emotions get messy, when schedules clash, when mistakes are made, and when old triggers rise to the surface. He doesn't run away from those moments, he meets them. Because walking away isn't even an option he considers when he's invested at that level. He may take space to process, he may need time to cool down, but he always returns with the intention of connection, not avoidance. His loyalty becomes something that's demonstrated not through words, but through consistency. He calls when he says he will. He follows through when he makes a promise. He shows up even when he's tired, even when he's frustrated, even when he's got a million things on his plate, because to him, love is not about convenience, it's about devotion. And what sets him apart is that he doesn't withhold affection or love as a punishment. He understands that the relationship thrives when both people feel emotionally safe, not when love is used as a bargaining chip. He remains emotionally available, checks in even during conflict, and shows her that her presence in his life isn't conditional, it's deeply rooted. In times of emotional stress, he doesn't become a ghost, he becomes an anchor. Even when he doesn't have all the right words, even when he's struggling with his own emotions, he finds a way to let her know, "I'm still here, we're still us." That kind of presence is rare, and it speaks volumes about how deeply he values the connection. He understands that choosing her once is easy, but choosing her daily, through boredom, through doubt, through temptation, through distance, through fear, that's the real love story. It's not the grand gestures or Instagram-worthy moments that define his commitment. It's the quiet consistency, the emotional endurance, the willingness to keep investing even when the initial spark gives way to real-life challenges. And because of that, she never has to question whether he's in it for the long haul. He doesn't just fall in love, he stands in love. And that stability, that reliability, that depth of intention is something only a very small percentage of women ever get to witness in a man, because it's a side of him that only emerges when he's found the one he can't imagine his life without. So when a man meets the one woman who reaches him on a level beyond attraction, beyond chemistry, and even beyond compatibility, something rare happens. He transforms. Not because she demands it, but because her presence awakens parts of him that have been dormant. He opens up in ways he never has before, lets her into the most unguarded parts of his soul, prioritizes her feelings like they're his own, includes her in the blueprint of his future, strives daily to become a better version of himself, listens to her influence with genuine openness, and most importantly, chooses her over and over, even when it's hard. These are not behaviors that come naturally with every relationship. These are sacred, rare, deeply intentional actions that only a select few women ever get to witness. Not because they're perfect, but because they create the kind of emotional safety and depth that calls forth a man's truest self. And if you're the one who sees this side of him, cherish it, nurture it, and know that you are not just loved, you are deeply seen, respected, and chosen in a way most women will never experience.